Chapter 12, The Salvation of Muff Potter. So salvation, salvación. So something saves Muff Potter. Summer brought with it the usual adventures, hopes, and disappointments. It was Tom's unfortunate luck to catch the measles. The measles is a sickness. And he had to stay in bed for almost 3 weeks. Those weeks seemed like an eternity. And when at last he was out again, the whole town was buzzing with excitement. Muff Potter's murder trial was finally starting. What? Okay, so it's been forever since we heard about Muff Potter and Injun Joe. So, it's starting now. The trial is where they decide whether Muff Potter killed the doctor or he didn't kill the doctor. It was the topic of every conversation. Tom could not escape it. Every mention of the murder sent a shudder through him and kept him in a cold sweat all the time. So sweat is when you're sweating like, oh, it's hot. But when you're really nervous, you can get a cold sweat. It's not from the heat. When he couldn't stand it any longer, Tom looked for Huck. He had to have a talk with him. It would be some relief to unseal his tongue for a little while, because they said we won't talk about it, but they can talk about it together because they both saw it together. So he wants to unseal his tongue. So sealed, and then unseal, okay. Okay. In addition, he wanted to assure himself that Huck had kept the morbid secret, so the deadly secret. Huck, have you told anybody about that? Whispered Tom. About what? Asked Huck. You know what. Oh, of course I haven't. Never a word, never a solitary word, so help me. Tom felt more comfortable, but he insisted that they swear again to keep mum, to keep quiet about what they had seen that fateful night. After Huck and Tom sealed their pact with another oath of blood, they discussed the fate of poor Muff Potter. So they made the oath or the promise again, and they sealed it with their blood. So they pricked their fingers again and signed something. I've heard talk that the people plan to lynch him if the court frees him, said Tom. So lynching is when people will hurt the person. Basically, that's what lynching is. Another person will hurt a person. You can look it up if you want to. It's a little, it's what they used to do in the olden days. We don't do it anymore. It's really mean, and it's not good. Sorry. Okay. The boys took a long walk and had a long talk, but it brought them little comfort. As twilight drew on, so as the evening came, they found themselves hanging around the neighborhood of the jailhouse, so the jail. They somehow hoped that something would happen to clear away their problems, but nothing did. The boys did as they had often done before. They went to the cell grating on the floor and gave Potter some tobacco and matches. So if you look back, sorry, it's going to take me a minute to find it. So on page 66, this picture, so imagine that when Tom and Huck are giving Muff Potter tobacco and matches. Luckily, there were no guards around. Muff was always so thankful for their little gifts that it only made their consciences ache more. So, something about Muff Potter is like he trusts people, right? He trusted Injun Joe. When Injun Joe said, you killed him, he's like, okay, I trust you. I guess I did do it. And like you can see how grateful he is to Tom and Huck. He just trusts people. So that's a characteristic about Muff Potter that makes him interesting. So he's a drunk, right? That's something that makes him interesting, but he's also very trusting. And he seems to be okay with this trial because it's what he did. After the visit, Tom went home miserable. That night, his dreams were full of horrors, so really bad stuff, scary stuff. Each day during the trial, Tom hung around the courtroom, drawn by an almost irresistible impulse to go in. But he forced himself to stay out. Huck was having the same experiences. So the trial, they could go in and they could watch it, but they chose not to, but they really wanted to go in. Finally, the great day came, the day that the jury was to make its decision. So whether Muff Potter's innocent or guilty. So guilty means he did it, innocent means he did not do it. The villagers filed into the courtroom and sat waiting for the news. The judge and jury entered and took their places. Shortly afterward, Potter was brought in. He looked pale and haggard, timid and hopeless. So imagine this man who doesn't believe, like, he probably thinks he didn't do it, but there's no proof he was holding the knife, right? And I bet he just felt horrible. All eyes were on him. Injun Joe sat in the gallery looking fierce and angry. So Injun Joe is there. Instead of waiting for the jury to reveal its decision, Potter's attorney rose to make an announcement. He had an important new witness and wanted to change Potter's plea to not guilty. In a firm, clear voice, he said, "Call Thomas Sawyer to the stand." Looks of puzzled amazement appeared on every face in the courtroom, Muff Potter's included. Every eye fastened itself on Tom with interest, so every eye turned to Tom and just followed Tom. As he rose and took his place on the stand, he was scared, but he took the oath without hesitation. Then the defense attorney asked the fateful question, "Thomas Sawyer, where were you on the 17th of June about the hour of midnight?" So where were you at midnight? Tom glanced at Injun Joe's iron face. So just like, I don't even know how you'd explain iron face. Maybe he just looked like really stern and just like frozen. I don't know. And his tongue froze. Tom's tongue froze. The audience waited breathlessly for Tom's reply, but his words refused to come. After a few moments and a few deep breaths, Tom relaxed enough so that his words began to flow. He told the whole story. He explained why he and Huck had been in the cemetery that night and described every detail of the ghastly murder. On hearing Tom's story, Injun Joe sprang from his seat, tore his way through the crowd, and leaped through the window. As a result of Tom's testimony, Muff Potter was set free, but Injun Joe was still alive and out there somewhere waiting. Dang! So Tom told the truth, okay? And he told everybody everything that happened that night and how Injun Joe was the one who killed Dr. Robinson. It wasn't Muff Potter. And as soon as Tom finished, Injun Joe jumped up. He ran through the crowd and he jumped out the window. Isn't that crazy? Like, holy cow. But now, oh my gosh, Injun Joe was still alive and out there somewhere waiting. Okay, so he's a murderer. So who knows what's going to happen to Tom. Holy cow. Isn't that crazy? Okay, so something you could say about Huck is he doesn't break his promises. Okay? So, because Tom was like, hey, have you, like, told anybody about this? And Huck is like, no. And they did another promise to make sure that they wouldn't tell anybody. Something about Tom. Ooh. He tells the truth. Okay. And a quote you could do with that. He told the whole story. He explained why he and Huck had been in the cemetery that night and described every detail of the ghastly murder. So that's page 140. And for Huck's, let me see. That's 134. Okay. Now, I want you to think of something you can do for Injun Joe. What did you just discover about Injun Joe and his character and who he is? What makes him interesting? So I want you to do that one on your paper, okay? And you can do more for Tom because we found out a lot about Tom, like how he kept going to Muff Potter and giving him tobacco and how guilty he felt. Like, there is a lot of evidence that can go with some of the things that we've written about Tom. And there are new things that we've learned about Tom today in the chapters we've read, but especially in that chapter, okay? So please, don't just write down what I write. You need to think of your own, okay? You need to find your own evidence and your own reasons for why Tom is an interesting character, why Huck is an interesting character, and Injun Joe and Muff Potter and all these characters, okay? So don't forget to do that, all right? Okay, we'll find out what happens next week. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. I am going to link 2 videos for you to watch from a Tom Sawyer movie so you can kind of see the scenes and not just read about them. They're pretty cool videos, so I'll link those so you guys can watch them, okay? All right, I will see you later.